Hey guys, it's Julie, a designer at the Quilted Cow, and today's tutorial is on the Charm Tote by Robert Kaufman. Before we begin, I'd like to thank my sponsors, Husqvarna Viking sewing machines, and Creative Goods rulers, mats, and rotary cutters. Let's begin.
Quiet on set, we are rolling.
This Charm Tote is the absolute best tote. I love using it for grocery shopping. It's very tall, very deep, and very wide. It'll hold lots of stuff. It's also perfect for a weekend getaway. Absolutely simple tote to make. Let's get started with the first step. The first thing you're going to do is to pick out 24 charms that you would like, or to use 24 5-inch squares. That's how many you're going to need for this tote. Once you get all of your charm pieces picked out, we're going to take them 2 by 2 and just put them right sides together and run a stitch down the side. Make sure you're paying attention if you have directional prints. Once you have all of your charms sewn into groups of 2, we're then going to take them and make 3 groups of 4 or 3 rows. Go ahead and make those now. All you have to do is to place your 2 together. Once again, paying attention if you have a directional print. We're going to take our group of 2 and lay them right sides together. Once you have your charms sewn into a row of 4, we're going to take this row and sew it to 2 others to make the side of our bag. So what we need to do is to place them on the table in whichever direction we would like and decide which way we need to press our seams. So have 2 seams going one way and this middle seam going the opposite direction. It makes it nest really nicely. So let's decide what way we're pressing. So on this way I press them all to my right side. So this one I'm going to use and press all to the left. And once you have all of your seams from your rows pressed in opposite directions, we're going to place them right sides together and pin or clip them in place. Once you have them all pinned or clipped together, we're going to step to our machine and sew all of our rows together. Once you have your sides made, it's time to press our seams. Now with these seams, I'm just going to press everything to the bottom of it. Now that you have your sides pressed completely flat, now you need to check and make sure it's the appropriate size, and if it's not, go ahead and trim it. Just make sure you trim evenly on the right and the left side and the top and the bottom. Now that you have both sides of your bag trimmed to size if needed, we're going to set these aside and start working on our handles. So let's get our handle fabric. So your handle fabric should have the interfacing on the back at this stage. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold it so our fabric is right sides together, and we're just going to stitch down one long side, creating a tube. Let's create that. Once you have your tube created, it's time to turn it right side out. Now you can do this by any method you choose. A lot of people just use a clothespin. I personally am in love with these tube turners. If you haven't tried these yet, you absolutely need to. You can find them on our website at thequiltedcow.com. But these are an absolute game changer anytime you need to turn a tube. So what you do is you just insert that little plastic tube in there and use this skewer, this wooden stick, and you just finagle your fabric up this stick. Once you have your tube right side out, what we're going to do next is adjust this so the side seam is on the right or left side. It doesn't matter, it's either way. And then we're just going to press this tube flat. Once you have your tube nice and pressed, it's time to determine if you would like to top stitch. If you're one of those people that has to do it, go ahead and do it at this stage. What you'll do is just top stitch 1/8 of an inch down both long edges of both handles. If you are not a person that has to have everything top stitched, this pattern doesn't call for it, so we're going to go ahead and continue on without it. Now it is time to attach our handles to our side fabrics. Let's start with one side first. Now for this stage, you're going to need to make a lot of measures and marks, so you need to get some kind of a writing utensil that you can erase. I'm going to use a friction pin and my absolute favorite ruler from Creative Grids. I use this all the time. So we're gonna measure 4.5 inches from the bottom corner, and we're just gonna draw a line right on our fabric. We're gonna measure 5 inches from the top edge and draw a line across. This will be where our box X stitch goes, a nice stopping point. I'm gonna make another line at the top edge just to make sure that my strap stays nice and even. So my strap will go up and then stop right here. I'm gonna make the marks on the other side on both sides of your bag. Once you have all of your marks made, it's time to pin your straps into place. So I'm gonna put my seam on the inside, and I'm just gonna come and lay my fabric so it's nice and even on the bottom and right against the line I drew. And then I'm gonna put some pins to hold it in place. I'm gonna make sure that my handle is not twisted, and I'm going to lay it down and pin the other side as well. Now my handles are completely pinned in place. The next thing I'm going to do is to find this 5-inch mark that I made, and I'm going to put my ruler 1¼ inches down from that and just draw a line right on top of your handle. This is going to be where we start and stop our box X stitch. So once you have sewn up to your 5-inch mark, we're gonna sew across the top of our handle. We're gonna turn our bag and sew down to that line that we drew. Turn your bag again and go across, forming a box on your handle. Then we're gonna turn it and go from the bottom corner to the top corner, making part of our X. Turn your fabric again and go back across the top stitch that you have made. And then we're going to turn it one more time, completing our X. Once you have your box X completed, just sew back down the other side, pinning everything in place. Once you have your first part of your handle stitched down, we're going to repeat that for the other side and for the other half of the bag. Let's continue sewing. Now that you have your handles tacked down, what you want to do is erase all the marks that you had just made to place your handles. If you're using a friction pin, now is the time to just use your iron to erase everything. The next step is to add the bottom onto each side of our bag. So you want to place your bottom fabric right sides together, line it up right on this bottom edge where you put your handles, and then pin or clip this in place. Once you have the bottom of the bag pinned or clipped into place, it's time to sew it using a 1/4 inch seam. Now that you have the bottom of the bag pressed away from the top part, we're going to go ahead and run a top stitch about 1/8 of an inch on the bottom side of this. Now that everything is top stitched and nice and neat, the next thing we need to do is to add our interfacing. The pattern does call for us to use a fusible fleece. If you would like a more formed bag, foam interfacing would be perfect for this as well. I'm making sure on my interfacing that I have the glue or the sticky side up. And then we're just going to make sure that all of our seams are nice and even before we press. Now you have each side of the exterior of your bag completed and you have your interfacing nice and applied. If you would like to quilt parts of your bag, now would be the time to do it. If you're not going to quilt it, let's go ahead and start our assembly process. So to assemble the bag, we're going to place it right sides together with the other piece. Now, whenever you're pinning or clipping in place, you want to make sure that the bottom of your bag is nice and even. And that's where you want to start your pinning or clipping. Now that your bag is pinned or clipped into place, it's time to sew the sides. We're going to sew down both sides and the bottom of this bag. Now that we have the exterior of our bag and the sides and the bottom all sewn, we are going to do the same thing for our lining. This time we'll be leaving a 5-inch opening in the bottom section of our bag. Let's set this part aside. For our lining, we're going to place our lining pieces right sides together, and then we'll be sewing 2 long sides and 1 short side. Now this short side is going to be the bottom piece where we leave our opening at. Let's get everything pinned or clipped. Now that we have everything clipped in place, we're going to step to our machine and sew our edges. Now that you have the lining of your bag sewn, making sure to leave this opening on the bottom, we are going to box our corners. You can start with your exterior or your lining, either one first, it doesn't matter. So to do that, we're going to just reach inside of our bag and line up our bottom corner and our side corner by pinching this together. Now once you have your seam lined up nice and even, we are going to measure in 4 inches from our corner. Once again, I'm going to use this adorable little ruler, and I am just going to make a mark right across the seam. I'm going to continue that mark all the way to the edges using my friction pin. Once you have your line drawn, put some pins or clips to hold it in place and mark all of the other corners just like this. Now that you have all of your corners marked and ready for boxing, let's start sewing right on this line we just drew. Once you have all of your corners stitched, we're going to cut a 1/4 inch away from the seam line. We're going to continue trimming all 4 corners that we have sewn. Once you have trimmed all of your corners, we are going to leave the exterior of our bag wrong side out, and we will be turning the lining of our bag right side out. Once the lining is the right side out, we're just going to place it inside of our bag. The next step is to line up our side seams on our top edge and pin or clip those into place. Once you have your side seams pinned into place, we're just going to go around the top, clipping the lining and the top edge of our exterior together. Now that you have the top of your bag all pinned into place, it's time to step to your machine and sew the top edge. Once again, we'll be using a 1/4 inch seam on this stitch. Now that the top of your bag is sewn, we are going to turn it right side out using the hole that we left in the bottom of our lining. Once we have it turned right side out, we're going to be turning our bottom turn opening in and then pressing it so it's nice and smooth. Once we have our lining pressed, you can put some pins or clips in it and sew this opening closed. Once we've completed the turn opening and everything's nice and stitched, we are going to tuck our lining inside of our bag. Once you have your lining tucked inside the exterior of our bag, we are just going to give this top seam a nice press before we top stitch it. Make sure your lining is tucked all the way inside. Now that you have your top seam nice and smooth, we're going to go around the entire top edge with a top stitch for a nice finished look. Once you've completed the top stitch on the top seam of your bag, you just want to make sure everything is nice and smooth. Make sure all your corners are nice and poked out. And that's how you make this simple charm tote. You can find this kit on our website at thequiltycow.com or on our Facebook Lives on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Please like and subscribe for more tutorials, and thanks for watching.
Okay, you wicked cool quilters, good job. You made it to the end. We would like to thank our sponsors, Husqvarna Viking Sewing Machines, Creative Grids, Rulers, Rotary Cutters, and Mats. Thanks for watching.